follow me. So it's about 10 minutes, maybe 10-minute walk to the base of Spoony Green Lane, and then we'll start on talking about the trespass there. So thank you all for coming. Thank you. This is smashing. Thank you. Oh, I hate she's going to take photos of my road. We'll take a photo, and then anyone who wants to, you know, carry on up.
Shall we all take one step forward so we can all hear better and be a bit cosy? There we go.
And then Sheila takes 2 steps back.
Yeah, Sheila runs away.
So again, for those I haven't already said, thank you very much for coming. Coming all this, some people come quite a distance. So I'm Sheila Wiggins. I'm a descendant of Henry Irwin Jenkinson, who is one of the leaders of the Latrigg failed trespass. So I explained a bit about Jenkinson when we were down on the park, and what his motivation would have been for some of the protesting about some of the paths closing. So in 1865, the railway arrived in Keswick. Brought lots of tourists, and we had a burgeoning tourist industry, obviously. And so there was going to be some disputes at some points about, as of today, same thing, nothing changes, people walking across the land. And so in 1886, the Keswick Footpath Preservation Society was started by Rawnsley. That's Canon Rawnsley, who went on to set up the National Trust. So Rawnsley was the president. Jenkinson was the secretary, and then William Ralph Fitzpatrick, who's the other kind of really notable person in the trespasses, was the vice president. So there were 2 trespasses particularly in Keswick that they wanted to look at, that they wanted to actually dispute. One was at Fore Park, which is near along the other side of Derwent Water. And this one, which is the access to Latrigg Fell. So Fore Park was seen as a local issue, whereas Latrigg Fell was seen as a national issue, because people were starting to say, if we don't have access to uncultivated mountain tops, you know, when will it end, basically? So people felt they really wanted to dispute it. So the landowner, Spedding for the landowner, and I believe they still are, that particular Spedding, he was the local magistrate, and he sort of threw the gauntlet down really, and sort of said, because he was going to prosecute 2 boys for trespassing, he said, I won't do that, I'm going to throw the gauntlet down and sort of say, if people want to dispute this and go to court, then I'm up for it, basically. So there were 2 trespasses. They did one small trespass when there was only about 15 or 20 people. They went up the terrace road and walked up to the top of Latrigg via the zigzag, and did the same at Fore Park. And then they started publicising that, and they received such, the landowners were so cross with them and were just really not very helpful at all, that people got so incensed that they actually, when they called for the next trespass, local people were really keen to come and join. So just before the big trespass on the 1st of October 1887, there was a smaller trespass in Fore Park when 500 people turned up for that. And then people were really encouraged to come the following Saturday, on Saturday the 1st of October in 1887, to come and trespass this, because Jenkins, he was a prolific writer. He wrote letters in all the national papers, and it was seen as a national a national thing. Sorry, my brain's gone. A national issue. And Samuel Prince came up from Trespass as well, who was a really well-known character. And so on that day, it was a beautiful day. People met at the base of Terrace Road, which you can't access now because we've got the A66 through it, but we will be passing the Terrace Road. So we'll stop and take some pictures there. And there were barriers all along the route, here and at the top when you meet the zigzag. So we'll stop at those places and then we'll come back down through the Terrace Road and you have to do a little bit of a detour. So we can walk all the paths that the trespassers walk. Now, really fortunate to have Roy Ellis here today, who local historian who has his postgraduate master's in Lake District Studies, wrote about the Keswick Trespasses, and he's just going to say some of the words that Jenkinson actually said to people before they set off on their march. Inspiring words. Yeah.
We're going to be inspired.
Well, Jenkinson is a great hero of mine because I live in Keswick. I often walk in Fitz Park, which of course he raised the money for, and I've been up Latrigg many times and always been grateful that he secured our right to walk up here. So this is what he said at the beginning of the Trespass. Today you are showing to the world a spirit which will kindle such a fire as will light up the whole of the British Isles. Latrigg must be the watchword, and the question of access to our mountain tops having been disputed, we must not rest satisfied until the ancient rights have been conceded, or the question is discussed and settled on the broadest principles. If we have no right of access to the summit of Latrigg, we have no right to ascend other similar mountains in Britain. I'll leave the rest till later. Or?
Okay, yes. No, thank you. Yep. So on the 1st of October, whichever newspaper you read, 2,000 or 2,500 people, whichever. But it was a beautiful sunny day which brought lots and lots of people out. So let's walk on up and we can carry on telling the story when we get further up, and we're going to stop where the Terrace Road meets Spoony Green Lane. Will you be able to point out to us from it?
Yeah, indeed.
When we get there, because that's where there were some barriers and they broke through.
Walk with me, people singing truth to power. Walk with me, out of the avenues onto the streets. Walk with me, onto the pavement, down to the beach. Walk with me, walk with me, walk with me, walk with me, walk with me.
And that's why apparently I haven't always told you this, why the Terrace Road was first created, was to get a bit sharp. Quick talk here about the significance of these gate posts and a bit more of the story then of the Trespass. So this is the Terrace. There were two roads that were disputed, the Terrace Road and Spoony Green Lane, that we've come up. And there was always the argument early on that there could have been an amicable compromise at the time without it going to court, because you can obviously get up to Latrigg Fell from here. So this is the way the trespassers would have come. They left, mostly a lot of them got off the train or came from the marketplace, and then would have walked to the gates of Greta Bank, which are no longer there because the A66 cuts across the path now. But when they got to those gates of Greta Bank, they were closed, locked. They had logs, boulders, tar, to really stop people getting through. And it was Jenkinson and Ralph Fitzpatrick who then, they were met by the solicitors of the Speddings, who then just spoke up and said we had a right of way. Very interestingly, Rawnsley, although he was the president of the Keswick Footpath Preservation Society, he never went on any of the trespasses, which I think was most probably a bit of diplomacy or a bit of politics really to do that. So yeah, 2000 or 2.5 came up here, and then they met barriers again here before they got on Spoony Green Lane. And so here are the gate, you know, here are the old gateposts, you know. So, so we're going to head off up that way. Roy, did you want to say anything?
Just you mentioned about Rawnsley being absent, and of course Spedding was probably the wealthiest member of his congregation. And I think he didn't want to upset Spedding.
Yes, yeah. But it's just, do you know when this became a permissive path? Because after the court, there was a court case the following year, and there was that compromise that this became the public right of way, and this was private, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah. When
private.
did it become a permissive path?
Well, it was later generations. I'm not sure of the date, but the Speddings who were here at the time of the trespasses died, and it passed on. And a later generation of Speddings opened it up
Made it permissive,
as a permissive path, and that's the status of it today.
Because
And John Spedding, who is the present head of the family, living at Mire House, he's been very generous. He set up the Calvert Trust, which you might have known helps people with disabilities have adventure holidays, and he donated buildings and created that. So he's quite the opposite of his predecessors, and he has encouraged people to come on the fells.
Yes. Because, as I might have already said, I don't live locally, and just from looking at an ordnance survey map, I wouldn't have known you could.
No, I
you
mean
know,
the
only
original
local
path,
people
as you
would
said,
know.
is cut
Yes.
through by the
Yes.
A66, and we have to make a detour on the way
Yes.
down.
Yes. So.
So
The people that we get out nowadays, I mean, you're looking, that would be London, wouldn't it?
They died just a couple of months later. And so that's the connection.
So I have this image of Ken Blues now and standing thinking to know when you came through this would have been the sort of still on the border. 30s. Yeah, they've got a great big shop.
Take a quick pic. Everyone just look at me and have a quick picture. Yay, there we are. That'll do. Right. This is the Cumbrian path here, which is the public right of way, and it carries on to Skiddaw.
Sorry, honey, chuck them out.
Carries on to so this is what they call the zigzag path that then takes you onto the summit of Latrigg Fell, and this too was blocked off at those trespasses, and there were more barriers, and I do believe that the landowners at the time tried to plant trees to spoil the view for everyone. They were really discouraging people to come up here and walk to the summit. So this was one at the court case that was heard July the following year. July 88 was the court case in Carlisle, and so the right to walk up here, roam about the top, that was what was won. And you'll see the one, for those who don't know it, you get a wonderful view when you get up to the top, right over Keswick and Derwent Water. So it's really sort of quite significant that this was one here.
I'm surprised they haven't built luxury flats up there.
Yes. Did you want to say anything else, Roy? Or are we going to say something at the summit? We'll wait till the summit. Yeah. Okay. So onward. It's only 3/4 of a mile now. So onward and upwards, and it's all. Yeah. Lots of people. Yeah, and that's the thing. Even if you got.
First Saturday of every month. Really green field.
A couple of days ago, back out. Just, a bit too much. Way! Yay!
Well done.
Well done. We should have a picture with the banner, I think, before we go. So Can you imagine if this had been closed off to people and they couldn't get up and see this? You know, it would have just been appalling. So we have a lot to thank those Victorian trespassers for, really. That, you know, this has remained open, and the reason I want to do this walk is to keep the memory of it alive, but also to remind us we've got to remain forever vigilant, really, about we must keep walking paths and, you know, make sure they stay open, really, and contest them, you know, and just keep doing it. But thank you everyone for coming, and we must just all stand. Can we have a flag, or should we just hold it up? A flag. I have got a thing I can hold it as a flag. On the website, if you go to blogs,
All right.
I wrote a long piece about Jenkins. Because I used it mainly, as I found information out, I wanted to just put it all somewhere. Really. In the public domain, I'm very much about getting it. Main road's gone through the path now, and where the gates were that they broke through, you know, to
That's
actually
right.
get onto Latrigg. So it'd be good to see that.
And that's very close to the big house which is still there where the Speddings were living.
Oh right, okay.
That's
so
really why they didn't like
they didn't
all
like, like it, yeah.
Especially, of course, as you mentioned, the railway. After the railway came, we had different sorts of tourists, all these working class people from Manchester and so on. And I think that's what prompted some of the landowners to close the paths.
Yes. Yes.
Because that was close to the station and right past his house.
It was what Wordsworth called the rash assault.
So right.
Yes.
The rash assault, the workers are coming.
So what I'd really like to do is here, at some point, it would be really nice if this is where the marker was. I just think there needs to be something. Because, you know, you've got, so whichever way people walk up, there needs to be something. So I think that's something I'm going to actually try and make a promise for. You know, that we could just, and it hasn't got to be too intrusive, just a nice scopes there. And anyhow, but that's my thoughts, that what I'd like to do with this over time, you know, is see if we can get some recognition about this. Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah, would be good. Would be good. So we
Maybe
can
the
do.
Speddings will contribute.
Maybe they will. They still own the land.
Yeah.
So
We need their consent.
need their consent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
I'm sure,
I mean,
I'm sure they won't turn you down because imagine the publicity.
yes.
All over.
Yes. And it is 140 year ago history, isn't it? You know. Yeah. And if it brings people to the area. Okay, so it's really, we're on our last leg then, down here. Thank you for sticking with us.
This is where we leave it.
Oh, I see. So they would have walked
They came marching from down there, across there, not that.
there. Right,
There's a
okay.
track, and they walked up the track 6 abreast singing Rule Britannia.
So great. That's
When was
awesome.
the A road built?
1970s.
Okay, so it's quite
Yeah. There was a protest on Latrigg, of course, against the building of the road, organised by Friends of the Lake District. But they didn't stop it.
it didn't succeed.
Mind you, I bet you're quite pleased not to have all that traffic going. It's one of these double-edged, you know, because you haven't got all the traffic going through Keswick, have you?
Oh,
It's
absolutely, yeah. For
kind of-
Keswick, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
People can still get here, as you say, without all the traffic through the middle. For that, just behind those farm buildings is a big house, the mansion, which we will see as we go past, which is where Spedding was living. That house was built in about 1801 by William Calvert, whom this charity is named after. He was a friend of Wordsworth. They were at school together. And in fact, he invited Wordsworth here for a holiday, and they stayed, Wordsworth and Dorothy stayed in this farmhouse. And William Calvert then built the terrace path. It was at the time of the wars with France. The cost of grain was very high and people were trying to find new places to grow grain. And so William Calvert decided he would try to grow barley on the top of Latrigg. But he couldn't get his horse-drawn plough up the steep bit of Spoony Green Lane, you know, that steep bit that we went up. So he built this terrace path, which is more gradual, which the horse-drawn plough could get up. And he ploughed, many acres, I forget now, across the top of Latrigg and behind. People advised him that it was a silly thing to do because it was too high up. And so it was. The barley never ripened and it was a complete failure. But that's why the terrace path was built in the first place, quite close to Calvert's big house. When Calvert died, his children weren't interested in living here. They'd already moved away. And so the house was sold to the Spedding family. And that's how Spedding came to be living here at the time of the Trespass. And he was chair of the local magistrates in Keswick. So he was the one, when after the railway came, he decided he didn't want tourists walking up here. So this is where he barricaded the gate with all the machinery behind it, and bushes and tar and so on. And we read that on that first small trespass, Jenkinson bounded over the obstructions and started pulling them away, and everyone joined in. But then, as Sheila mentioned, a month later they decided to have the big mass trespass and publicised it nationally. It was in all the national newspapers, and that's how all the people, 2,500, came to be here. A lot of them coming up from London, Manchester, etc. on the train. And they would have walked up to this point, and they would have gathered at this point. Those buildings were still there, so how you got 2,500 in here, I don't know.
And this is where they would have addressed.
This is where this
Jenkinson
would have made that speech.
and Ralph Fitzpatrick
and Samuel Plimsoll, the Member of Parliament. They all made their speeches here. And then on the bigger trespass, actually, Spedding had not put all the bushes and the tar back because he'd got such bad publicity the first time. The local press said it was a very ungentlemanly thing to put sticky tar over the barriers. So the second time it was a gate that was locked and a sign saying private. So after the speeches it was a fairly simple matter to break open the gate. They had brought people with pickaxes and so on with them, and they broke open the gate and marched up the terrace path.
Was there no resistance to it? I mean, did his staff not try and stop people?
No, I mean, Mr. Broach, the solicitor, was there, and incidentally, until recently, there was still a firm of solicitors in Keswick called Oglethorpe and Broach. He was there and, told them that they were trespassing and that they couldn't go, but of course they ignored him and went anyway. The gamekeeper was also there, Spedding's gamekeeper, and when they all started to sing Rule Britannia, he asked them to stop because it would disturb the game birds. And Jenkinson, bless him, actually tried to get them all to stop singing, but they ignored him and carried on anyway.
That's what happens when people
thank you for...
And then after the trespass, of course, they all came back down to here and walked back down into town. And they were met at the station, which, is just more or less where we started, with a brass band, and the brass band accompanied them into the middle of town, playing "See the Conquering Hero Comes."
Thank you for explaining all that and showing us the actual gates.
That's,
'cause
yeah, I
wouldn't-
mean, when I
wouldn't have
discovered
known
it, it
that.
was so lovely to
So,
think
yeah.
this is the spot.
This
It's
is the spot.
definitely the place.
Yeah. So the committee of the Keswick Footpath Preservation Society, they were all aware they were going to be taken to court. You know, they're doing this so that legal action would be taken. And so Jenkinson had set up a defence fund as soon as they knew they were going to do this. So they'd raised the money, and the funds kept coming in right up until the court case, which was in July the following year, July '88 at Carlisle. So that was a 2-day event in court, and then in the end a compromise was reached in that then the terrace path was closed off and the access to Latrigg was via Spoony Green Lane. And as Roy explained, then years later, when there was a different generation of Speddings living here, they decided to, you know, let people walk and make the terrace path a permissive path. So, you know, it was a victory. It was a real victory to allow people to actually wander around the top of Latrigg Fell and enjoy it. And we've all been able to enjoy the smashing views, and you imagine if that had been sort of taken away. So I think we should have this is somewhere we really should have a picture taken with the banner, I think, you know. So anyone who wants to stand behind me will do that. And,
Facing a barrage, yeah.
Paparazzi, yeah, it's like outside of...